When is the last time someone read you a list of things you are failing at and you cried? Not because it was cruel, not because they were wrong, because every line landed and you knew it before they said it. That is 1 Corinthians 13. The passage you have heard over unity candles and white linen, it was not written for a wedding. It was written to a room full of people who could not stand each other. And Paul wasn't toasting anything. He was performing surgery. I want to sit inside this passage with you today. 1 Corinthians 13, verses 4 through 7. You know it. You have heard it 100 times. But the people who heard it first were in a fractured worship hall in Corinth. And Paul had spent 12 chapters cataloging their sins before he got here. Let me read just the core of it, plainly. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not puffed up. It does not dishonor others. It does not seek its own. It is not easily provoked. It keeps no record of wrongs. It does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. All right, everybody knows those words. Embroidered on pillows, framed in hallways. But there is a detail in the Greek I almost missed. And once I saw it, the whole passage tilted. English gives you adjectives. Love is patient. Love is kind. Like you were describing someone's personality at a dinner party. Oh, she is so patient. He is so kind. But the Christian word for love, agape, it's a verb. So it's not just about how love feels, but what love does. It chooses patience. It chooses kindness. So instead of a simple property, love is a dynamic action. It is punctuality. It is a sense of smell. Kind of changes the whole picture. The Greek is not doing that. Paul uses 15 verbs, not qualities love has, actions love performs. Makrothymei, it suffers long. Physioutai, it acts kindly. Uziloi, it does not envy. Every single one is a present tense active verb, which in Greek means ongoing habitual behavior. Not love was patient that one time. Not love will be kind eventually. Love is, right now, continuously doing these things. Or it is not love. And the negations are just as sharp. Physioutai, it is not puffed up. Greek negation of a present tense verb does not mean love occasionally manages not to be arrogant. It means if arrogance is your sustained pattern, love is not present. That is binary, not a spectrum. The moment you flatten those verbs into adjectives, you turn a behavioral audit into a compliment. And the whole thing Paul was doing, the scalpel he was holding, goes dull. Now, the structural piece is what really arrested me this week, because chapter 13 does not live alone. It sits between chapter 12 and chapter 14, and both of those chapters are about spiritual gifts. Chapter 12 argues that gifts are distributed for the common good. Chapter 14 argues that building others up outranks showing off. And right in the center, the hinge, Paul drops this. He could have tucked it at the end of 12, could have opened 14 with it. He did not. He centered it, which means chapter 13 is the criterion, the lens. Take it out, and the gifts chapters become a technical manual. how to manage your spiritual portfolio. Leave it in, and the gifts chapters become an indictment. Your gifts, without these 15 verbs, they are noise. Paul said it plainly 3 verses earlier. If I speak in tongues and have not love, I am a clanging cymbal. If I have prophecy and knowledge and faith to move mountains and have not love, I am nothing. Not less effective, not slightly off. Nothing. And there is something the Corinthians would have heard that we miss completely. That word physioutai, puffed up. Paul has already used it 5 times in this letter. At 4:6, 4:18, 5:2, 8:1. Every time aimed directly at them. It is from physa, bellows, literally inflated with air. All appearance, no substance underneath. So when they hear love is not puffed up, they hear their own name. Envy? Paul accused them of it in chapter 3. Rudeness? He described it happening at their communion table in chapter 11, the wealthy eating first while the poor went hungry. Not easily provoked. Their worship services had prophets cutting each other off mid-sentence, fighting for airtime. Every phrase in these 4 verses targets a specific behavior Paul has already named. This is not a poem they smiled at. It is a mirror held to their faces. And the first verb, Makrothymei, this is the one that stops me. It is a compound word. Makros, long. Themos, passion, anger. Long-tempered, slow to ignite. But it is more than that. This is the exact word the Septuagint uses to translate the Hebrew phrase erek apayim, which literally means long of nostrils. It is God's self-description. Exodus 34, verse 6, Moses asks to see Yahweh's glory, and instead of a vision, God gives him a name. The Lord, merciful and gracious. Erek apayim, slow to anger, abounding in steadfast love. And when did God say that? Right after the golden calf. Right after the people he just rescued melted their jewelry into an idol and threw a party around it. So Paul's first verb is not an ethical tip. It is a divine attribute. The first thing love does is reproduce what God did at Sinai, remaining present with people who are actively provoking him. Not people who deserve patience. People who have just built a calf. That reframes everything. Because patience stops being a personality trait, something you either have or do not, and becomes a theological act. Failing patience with a provoking person is not a temperament issue. It is a contradiction of the God whose name you carry. My brother-in-law said something at Easter dinner 2 weeks ago that I have not been able to put down. We were clearing plates, and my sister was frustrated with their youngest, who had been, honestly, insufferable all afternoon. The kind of behavior where you are embarrassed in front of extended family. And she said something sharp, not cruel, just the edge of a voice that has been holding it together all day and finally slipped. And my brother-in-law, still holding a stack of plates, just said, almost to himself, "She is 7. I can be long about this." He did not say patient. He said long, like it was a direction, not a feeling, like he was choosing the shape of the next 20 minutes. That is Makrothymei, not a vibe, a verb. And it is easy to hear that and think, okay, fine, patience with a 7-year-old, sure. But Paul is not writing about 7-year-olds. He is writing about adults who should know better. People who are cutting you off mid-sentence. People who are eating the good food before you arrive. People who are using their spiritual resume to make you feel small. It is a Monday morning. You are 20 minutes into a meeting that should have been an email, and the person across the table is taking credit for your work, not subtly, naming your deliverable with their pronoun. And your jaw tightens, and that heat starts, the one right behind your eyes, and you are being sharpened. That is paroxenetai. Para, alongside, oxys, sharp, the same root as paroxysm. Love is not sharpened into retaliation.
Not love does not feel the sharpening. Love feels it. The verb does not deny the provocation exists. It denies retaliation as the response. The feeling is real. The sharpening is real. What love does with it, that is the verb. And then there is the ledger. Ou logizetai to kakon, does not reckon the evil. Logizomai is accounting vocabulary. It is the word you use when you are entering a figure in a book, tallying, keeping a column current. You have a ledger. You know you do. There is a person, maybe a parent, maybe an ex, maybe a coworker who has been there too long, and you have every entry filed, not written down. Worse, memorized. The date, what they said, the exact tone. And Paul says love does not keep that book open. Not love forgives and forgets. That is a different claim. Ou logizetai means love refuses to enter the next line. It closes the account. Not because the offense was not real, because the ledger itself is the evidence that love has left the room. My uncle drove to Tucson once, 4.5 hours, to sit on a porch with a man who cheated him out of a business deal 11 years earlier. He did not go to forgive him. He went because the man's wife had died, and nobody else was coming. When I asked him about it later, he said, I closed that book a long time ago. There was nothing left to hold. He did not say it was easy. He said it was possible. And that word, Stegei, bears all things. It is from Stegei, roof. Literally what a roof does in a storm, or a hole against the sea. Love covers, not by pretending the rain is not falling, by standing between the rain and the person underneath. There is someone in your life right now who is exposed. Their failure is visible, maybe publicly, and you have a choice. You can be the one who mentions it at the next gathering, the one who shakes your head and says, well, you know how they are. Or you can be the roof. Not denial. Proverbs 10:12 draws the same line. Hatred stirs up strife, but love covers all offenses. Covering is not pretending the offense did not happen. It is refusing to weaponize it. That is a different posture entirely. And maybe the hardest thing about this passage, harder than any single verb, is the structural claim underneath all 15 of them. The Corinthians thought their gifts proved their maturity. Prophecy, tongues, knowledge, these were spiritual currency. The more dramatic your gift, the higher your rank. Paul does not grade their gifts. He grades their behavior. And the grading scale is Exodus 34. Not are you gifted, but does your conduct reproduce the character of the God you claim to worship? Whatever you point to as evidence that you are growing, your theology, your service, your discipline, your giving, Paul says submit it to the 15 verbs, not as a feeling check, as a behavioral audit. Did you, this week, with the specific person who most provokes you, act any of these verbs? Not feel them, act them. Because the relief, and there is relief buried in here, is that spiritual maturity just became measurable. You cannot will prophecy into existence. You cannot manufacture a spiritual gift. But you can, tomorrow morning, choose to be long about your anger with one specific person. You can close one ledger. You can be one roof. The passage was never a poem about how love feels. It was always a question about what love does. Which verb are you failing?